Welcome, everybody. This is SharePoint Dev Weekly, episode 52. It's a great start. Sorry, we're just talking about my privacy screen, which I just got from Amazon. This is brilliant. There's no way to see what I'm doing.
Well, we actually can see it in the screen in the back.
That doesn't work. No, I need a mask. No. Anyway,
I use a privacy tube.
Yes, I'm heading to Redmond within 2 weeks or so. There's a SharePoint Dev Week. Not SharePoint Dev Weekly. This is what you get when you have 3 days off. There's a dev kitchen for our partners in the Redmond in a few weeks. So flying over, and I still haven't got my private screen for my Surface Book, so I needed to get one. Hopefully this one works. The previous one, which I actually got, was meant to be magnetic and everything else, and then it was actually just sticky, and it was horrible. It was just. So let's see if it works. You never know what you're getting when you're ordering Amazon even. Anyway, it is, I have no idea what it is, 16th of September. I've been 3 days off in Lapland, which is actually technically not true, but it's close by in Lapland. So actually, 3 business days off, but during the plus the weekend. And I just drove 700 kilometers, which is 430 miles, to get here to do the recording. So,
wow. And then once we're done, you're going to be back, right?
Yeah. Yeah, we'll let the kid over there. Damn, okay, I need to go. No, luckily not. But it's our summer place or whatever. It's not no longer summer. AC was actually met surprised on the weather conditions in Facebook related, and that we had 26 Fahrenheit this morning, which is like 2 Celsius. So not freezing.
Yeah, we're like
the place.
We are nearly 4 times that where I am.
I can imagine. Yeah, I can imagine. Anyway, so last week there was a interesting blog post from AC related on SharePoint Framework Summer 2019. That's great. I'm going to use that for the promo.
Yes.
So 2019. And now I need to remember that this is also getting released as a podcast. So he was making a funny face. So if you're listening to this as a podcast, you want to see that. But. So AC has been working quite closely with us as part of the SharePoint PMP team, the core team. So, and which, by the way, we're going to extend and more details on that one later. But anyway, so and AC is also having his own SharePoint framework experiences due to various reasons. Do you actually want to explain what do you do for a living and how do we know each other and all of that? Just in case if nobody knows who's Andrew Connells. Hey, you never know.
Sure. So yeah, I've been doing like the SharePoint. I've been in the SharePoint dev world, I guess, for 15 plus years. That's the gray hair. Yeah. And like right now, so I'm focused primarily.
I don't have that.
I don't. You diet.
Spray. Yeah.
You have to diet. There's no way. I have. Well, at least we both still have our hair, so that's
true. That is true.
But we do. So I focus primarily on the SharePoint framework today, and I have a course that I sell, a video-based course that I sell. So I do a lot of for developers on the SharePoint framework, and I guess I've been working with Vesa, with you, and with the engineering team and the marketing guys for a while now, not just in the SharePoint framework space, but in like SharePoint dev space for a long time. So I'm a big fan of what you guys are
solutions, like from farm solutions, and SharePoint designners. And
I go farther back. I go back reflecting the Microsoft.SharePoint.dll.
Yes.
Oh, even farther back. I'm back. So I started my days in the Microsoft Content Management Server 2002 days, which is ironic because the guy, like the engineer that kind of owns the SharePoint framework, Pat Miller, that's where he came from.
Yes,
so
that is true.
We go way, way back. Yeah.
Yeah, and you've been working with us closely, providing us feedback through internal internal channels as well, but obviously you do public blogging as well. And this article, which we wanted to talk about openly today, we talked about it actually quite hectically last week as well. But it's good to have you here, and let's go this through one by one, and then you can be the customer side of the house, and Waldek can be the customer side of the house. Kind of, hey, what's with this? And I'll be the
The Microsoft side of the house.
Yeah, so Microsoft side of the house. Well, I think that's kind of given. That's my role, which is actually, yeah. Oh, it's now turning 13 years since I've joined Microsoft.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Is that a bad omen, being 13?
I live in house number 13, so
that explains a lot.
What do you mean? It just works.
I'm kidding.
And let's see, our maintenance list has been inside floor, ceiling, closets, walls, doors, outside doors, kitchen, bathroom, sauna.
So is there anything
pretty
left
much everything.
from
roof we did this summer, and now we're going to order the new windows. So after that, it's all done except outside walls.
And a privacy screen. So there you go.
And a privacy screen. There we go. So that's what happens when you live in a house number 13. Well, anyway, so let's actually get back on the track of things. Now, let me actually share my screen, and let's talk about your blog post, and let's talk about those things openly, and let's talk about also the plans, what we have in Microsoft side to address some of this feedback. And obviously, well, I've been away for a few weeks. It feels like weeks.
When you saw your inbox when you got back, it felt like a few weeks.
Indeed. It's horrible. Anyway, I'll get whoever is watching this or listening this and sent me an email during my absence of 3 days. I'll get back to you in the next 3 weeks, maybe, when I catch up on the email. But let's actually start on these things. You basically too long didn't read, for those who don't know what this actually means. AC is such a hipster. He uses the youngster wording. So you're staying up to date on the terminology.
I tried to.
Yeah.
My son shows it to me.
Yeah, that's a fair point. That is a fair point. But basically, the ask is that we would actually address or basically increase the maturity of the platform, because we keep on actually having new releases and new versions coming up all the time. And then there's still kind of, let's say, old leftovers which we haven't cleaned up properly, which is basically the task around these things, right?
Yeah, that's a fair way to say it. I mean, I think, like I said in the post, I want to be very clear. This is not me complaining about it, because I still feel like I love the direction that SharePoint is going in from an extensibility platform. It follows what the rest of the web does. And I think that it helps. It's nice that SharePoint developers are being taught these new skills, because the skills that you're learning are not SharePoint development skills. They are web dev skills that can be transferred to many, many other different tasks and jobs that you have. So
yep.
I think this is good. Generally, I love what you guys are doing. Just have a few things I'd like to, I wish for.
No. And wish lists are completely fine. And by the way, I'm just putting this one away. Wish lists are completely fine. And that's something which definitely we're asking for all of our community members all the time. Give us feedback. And then obviously people need to remember that we are building a product, and there are multiple internal, let's say, priorities which are pushing the schedules and all of that. But giving the feedback actually gives us a lot of the insights on, hey, people care. And these are the things what we need to address. And every now and then when somebody yells loudest, I'm just like, well, you need to actually fix this. We need to wait to see if there's somebody else who's actually asking the same thing, which is the user voice process and all of that. But it's an interesting, obviously, dilemma for us to address all of the feedback as fast as possible, given the resources and the other priorities what we're having. But absolutely valid feedback on this one. So let's go this through one by one, and let's talk about these things. Actually, Waldek has been pretty closely involved on the issue list handling in the past as well, related on SP Dev Docs. AC is currently helping us on managing a lot of the incoming issues, which are not necessarily always issues. Some of them are feedback. Some of them are basically a comment in the document. So if somebody comes there and says 282 issues and freaks out, it doesn't mean that it's actually 282 actual bugs.
Right.
But that is the first impression, and that's basically something which we need to start fixing, because the feeling is that we're not necessarily addressing this in a fast enough. from community side.
Yeah, and I think that there's also, I mean, I said it in the post too, but I think just that when people see that, make sure that they understand that even though you see 282 that I called out or 163 things that are tagged as bug confirmed, that's first of all, it's not just about SharePoint Framework, because that includes everything SharePoint Dev. But the other thing too is, when the issue list first started back in August of 2016, it really wasn't until relatively recently that we've done a better job. We collectively, Microsoft, community, everything, that we have done a better job of trying to having more process around the list. And so I'm sure there are a lot of dupes in there. So you got a lot of things that are repetitive in some places. And we're doing that's one of the big things I'm trying to focus on, is trying to find old issues that, we could still complain about old stuff that we could consider broken, but it may be irrelevant now. And so it shouldn't even be open as an open issue anymore. So
True. And obviously the issue list is actually, it is super important for us as well, because through the issue list, we've been able to identify things which we need to jump on immediately. And then having that communication channel through the issue list helps, because having a 280 characters, somebody sending a feedback in Twitter, it's not that beneficial. Having a real issue, and then analyzing the situation is actually critical thing, which is now harming thousands of people or thousands of customers and tenants, and we need to jump on it. It's much easier when you have unlimited context, when people actually give you the insights on what's actually happening. We've been having few of those issues. Obviously, those been already fixed, kind of those critical things. There was a one in C, I think there was a type change or something, and few similar kind of things, which then harmed numerous tenants, but luckily they were actually, then the rollout was cancelled or put on hold, and then that helped a lot. But to be fair, pretty recently, so we were actually in a relatively good status on tracking all of the incoming issues in springtime, but then we've been struggling internally on keeping up to date on the things. We were able to actually get, let's say, the untriaged issue list down to, what was it, like 30? And now it's again extending because we haven't the internal issue list. So what actually happens behind the scenes, which isn't that obvious, all of these issues are getting replicated to Vesa Studio DevOps, right? It's Vesa Studio Online or DevOps. Azure DevOps is nowadays the right name, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
We keep on changing these names. It's just, but
that is the Microsoft way.
I know. But well, to be fair, I love the naming of the iPhones. The new iPhones are following up on the Microsoft naming conventions. Pro, Max, Super, Duper, 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 X7. Now, sorry. But yeah, on our internal DevOps instance, we're actually triaging them, and then we try to come back on here and replicate or do the modifications back. And that's one of the challenges what we're also having, is that people work and our engineers work in the DevOps, but they forget about coming back on the list. And now we have a lot of leftovers. So what we need to do as a engineering organization is really book some time and go through and do a cross analysis on what's still actually valid and what's not valid, because now it gives a wrong impression on the situation, definitely. Still, 2,750 issues have been closed, so not too bad. And you think about that. I mean, that's quite a few in 3 years. You've closed over 2,700 issues. We've only got 760-ish that are open right now. And a lot of those, I know that you and I have talked about it. We're going to run through and look at some of the very old ones that have had no activity in a long time, and just go ahead and close those. And I mean, if it's a valid issue, then someone can reopen it and reference the one that was closed. But if you ask a question, I've even asked Waldek a question like 2 years ago, and if Waldek didn't get back to me by now, I mean, even if he got back to me, it doesn't matter. What?
What? You asked me. I didn't get back.
No. I'm making something up.
Oh.
I don't know. I'm sure I could find an email somewhere, but I mean, I'm sure it'd be the exact same way with me. I'm sure you've asked me something and I never responded. So I mean, it's like it's just classic stuff. I mean,
on email.
It's just classic stuff. I mean, you see other very popular libraries or repos on GitHub where they automatically close things that have been open for a very long time with no activity, and they just close them because it's no longer relevant, and it clutters things. It doesn't need to be there. If there's a genuine issue, then when we close it and we lock it, then open it back up and reference the one that was there. I mean, that's just if it was that much of an issue. But somebody, I mean, case in point, let's say somebody has opened up an issue, they have a bug with something, and they opened that issue 2 years ago. If they turn around, they've left the job, or they no longer working in SharePoint, they're not going to respond, and there's no way for us to repro what their problem was. We had any issues on it, so it's not actionable. We can't figure it out. So,
sure.
Anyway,
cool. Yeah. Moving on thing, modernize the SharePoint framework project. So this is that's a header 1 probably, and then this is header 2, unless I'm completely mistaken. Your font size,
or 2 or 3, 2 and 3.
Yeah, I know. It's a 2 and 3, but I want to change that. I just redid the site, so that was like, do we change that? I'm like, I'm not a UI guy. I'm going to find somebody else to tell me what to do.
There we go. I just told you what to do. No, just kidding. Just kidding. Okay, so finish the README MD and make it useful. So this is basically, can you modernize the this is modernize the default README in the default SPFX projects. Yes, we can easily do that. So this is something what we definitely need to have. Let's say a suggestion. What would be the optimal README? And no doubt it should follow the template which we actually demand for all of our software to actually do, because that template is designed for a purpose. So it actually has the needed steps, repro step, it has the interest step, who've written the thing, and all of that stuff.
Yeah, and so generally speaking, I absolutely hate people that are part of the problem and they're not part of the solution. So everything that I complain about here, I'm trying to also provide some sort of a solution. So in that post note in there, I opened up a new issue. I created my own, what I would think that the ideal README should be. I mean, not for my projects, I have my own opinion on that, but I think that in general, what should a README have in it? If you create it, either it's useful or don't create one at all, but don't create one that's kind of half done.
Absolutely.
And that's the way it feels. And so, and so that's, I created an issue. I'm not going to say I bugged it, but I put an issue in there and just said, here's what I would put in there. And I know that Stefan Bauer already incorporated that into the PMP generator, but it really should be one. It should be in
the box one. Absolutely, and we can easily do that. That's like not a problem at all. So easily doable. So you can consider that definitely done.
That's easy. So wait. So I had a thing like, can you fix that?
No, this is my show. No.
Well, it's actually our show. You have your own show.
I'm just kidding.
I'm clearly in a way too good mood after a few days off, and I'm officially still on vacation today. So just promising fixing everything. So let's see if my engineers are agreeing with my comments. But they should.
So far it's just been docs. Yeah. So far we just talked about docs. Wait till you get later on the list. Then I got some stuff the engineers won't like me.
Okay, moving on things. I'm actually going to zoom this slightly. Move non-product dependencies to package JSON dev dependencies. So this is, again, no brainer. If we have something which shouldn't be in the should be only in the dev dependencies, not in the dependencies, let's fix that. It's a no-brainer thing to do. So absolutely.
So, okay, I agree. And there's an issue that I referenced in there, issue number 2249, which one of the engineers also agreed. And they even said, we'll put this on the backlog. But that was like over a year ago.
Yeah, I know.
So there is no activity on that since a year, right? So we close it now?
So we're going to close it now. So
if we go by the rules,
let me do this. I'm going to take one of the red post-it notes. I'm going to write here 4581.
No,
2249. I know exactly who's the person who's gonna actually make this happen. So
can you also do 1690? We didn't mention that above, but that was like
one step at a time.
No, oh my God, that's a 404. It's just a 404 to the icon, the office icons that don't even exist. The link doesn't even exist anymore. I'm just saying, use the right one.
Sorry, what was it?
So scroll up just a little bit, a tiny little bit.
Down?
No, up. And right there. Okay, right where your mouse is. Yeah, that one. That one. So that one, if you hover over the manifest file for a component, yes, that link is still pointing to Office apps. I think it's officeicons.azurewebsites.net, which doesn't exist anymore.
Okay.
But I guess ideally, like for this thing, it would be easier to have an aka MS link that you can change regardless of the code.
Yes. Correct.
Yeah.
Now that's the 3 currently on the list, and I know that
we did have 4. We did have 4, right?
So. Okay.
You might need some more post-its.
Or he has a lot of them.
Okay.
Move non-products. Clean out unnecessary entries in package. Absolutely makes sense as well. It's like it's no-brainer. If we have those things, we should actually get them cleaned. And definitely clean up logging in the browser JavaScript console. This is a slightly problematic thing. We talked about it actually in the last week as well, because this comes down on the fact that there's actually multiple different development teams who are doing SharePoint. Our team is responsible for shipping SharePoint framework, but any of the other teams, like List team or Library team or the Modern Pages team, might actually use the console as well. So this is more developer hygiene across to our organization, kind of educating people that, hey, don't do that, because the third-party developers have no clue then what's causing that message coming in. So.
Right, and I fully understand that, and I get that this is probably the hardest one for you guys to deal with, because it's the least that you have, the least amount of control you have or influence you have over it.
But it's getting better. To be fair, it was worse because we had the beacon. Beacon was at some point was there.
That's true.
That was horrible, by the way, because it was showing stuff all the time.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it's a little bit better, but it's relative. I mean, it's all very relative. It's very hard, and it's not just you guys, but when you're a dev platform, or when you want to be a dev platform, it just makes it tough for developers who are trying to use the console, which we shouldn't be using the console. We should have a different way to log stuff and raise errors and stuff like that. I've got my way of doing it. Waldek's probably got his way of doing it. And it's hard when that console has got so much stuff in it every time you open it up. Outlook.com has the same problem. Facebook.com has the same problem. We all have, a lot of them have it. So.
Yep, but it's fair feedback. We should have a look on it. We should be seeing if we can actually reduce the logging. Makes perfect sense. Now, finish modern. Come on, Microsoft, finish the job. Absolutely. So this is actually in our list of things, most likely coming quite soon, actually, to make sure that the app catalog is also modern. It's been one of those challenging things where the app catalog resources which we have for fixing that thing or taking the modifications have been prioritized on doing something else in the platform. Now, this also relates on the return to classic SharePoint experience, and then returning being on the site contents page. These things are slightly problematic as well, because they actually overlap multiple teams and they have their multiple connections. Because if you're on a site content page, it's no longer just our platform team, but it's a valid feedback. We need to get it fixed, so people don't need to move to classic, and they can stay in modern. At some point, we talked about also the fact that we should have a tenant level switch where you can actually say, is this link available or visible to return to classic SharePoint? Because that way you can basically say that whatever is missing, I don't care. And you provide only modern experiences for your customers and end users, so you don't have to worry about the classic extensibility, which is horrible if you need to do that.
So one of the things that's funny about this, and I don't know if funny is the right word to say it, but this is the one that I'm probably the most, I guess this is one where it was the hardest one to write, because it's the one that, or the second hardest one to write. The hardest one was at the very end. But this is one of those things I feel like so strongly about, that, I mean, this has been going on for so long that modern's not done. And I understand that it's multiple teams, but, and I'm going to say this as nicely as I can, because I don't want this to come across as me being a jerk or anything. I get that you're Microsoft.
It's fair feedback. It's yeah.
But when I hear, like, when customers hear that, it spans multiple teams or it's hard to do and all that kind of stuff, it's like, yeah, I get that. But we're on year like 3 or 4, and those are your problems. Those aren't my problems. And somebody has got to fix that, because the fact that, so I've gone through and I've put in a done stuff that I wasn't supposed to do, which use DOM manipulation to put an app customizer on an entire tenant for 2 or 3 different customers. And we just wanted to see, a couple customers let me do this, put an app customer on their site, and I put a hook on the return to classic. Yep. And I put a hook on a couple of the places where they had to do stuff in the ribbon that didn't exist in modern. And yep. we logged all of that telemetry over to App Insights and looked at it. And it was staggering how much stuff people are switching over from modern into yep. classic to get something done and then to switch back. And it's like,
yep. Yep.
So anyway.
And I can't keep on saying anything more than there yep. is a more interest in our side also getting this properly done. So really truly finishing the job. I can't obviously give any exact dates or anything because I wouldn't be here next week if I was actually giving some some kind of information. But there's definitely more internal, let's say, focus on finishing the modern overall. Regardless, is it a dev platform team or whatever team, but it's an end-to-end senior leadership team in our organization really wants to finish the modern, and you can actually see that also on the investments related on like document sets and good example. That's now also in list and libraries, but there's now refocus again on the list and library experiences and making sure that it is truly there, rather than that you need to fall back on the classic. So can't go exact details on what happened there, but still.
Cool.
And this side of the house, the return to classic, to remove applications and all of that, that's actually my team's responsibility. So we need to figure out how to make these things happen in the modern experiences as well. So you don't have to fall back on the classic for this one either. So.
Now, you see, if you had issue for that, that would be the time to give Vesa the number, so he would write it down, post it.
This is more problematic. Finnish modern
doesn't matter. Doesn't matter.
Traceable. There's no way for.
Create an issue quickly.
So I almost did that. Well, that's a good point. I almost did that, but I tried to follow our issue rules, which is technically that's by design. That's not a bug, and so. It really would be a user voice thing to say, please finish it and get votes for doing that. That I can't, I wanted to do it because I wanted to give an issue in there, but I didn't want to also I didn't want to create it and go like, hey, look, I'm involved in helping with the issue list, but I don't want to, and I'm going to break our own rules because I can keep somebody from locking my issue or closing it. So, but I totally hear you.
Yeah. Cool. The next one. So this one again is the header here, so let's actually get in here. Finish the MVP features. So finalize SharePoint framework extensions. Field customizers do not work with list views and web parts. Absolutely correct. Field customizers do not support the new edit forms. They only support the read-only, which is absolutely valid feedback as well. Those are getting a lot of votes in the user voice, and there's definitely this relates on the more focus on the list and library side of the house. There's no way for there's no good excuses on why that has not happened from Microsoft side of the house. So absolutely, HTTP client batch support. That should come out potentially in 10 or 11. So we should be getting closer and closer on making that happen.
Ooh,
it was more a design decision to how do we make that happen. But again, fair feedback. We talked about it in MVP calls a few times. We talked about it in other areas a few times, semi-openly. And it's time to lock the plan. So,
can I open a can of worms just a little?
Sure.
So
I'm always happy to be the target. So
perfect, excellent. So
that's why I'm a recovering consultant. So I can always have this discussion.
Yeah, in the end, you can always say, well, it depends, right?
Yes, exactly.
So when you think about field customizer supporting for new and added forms, it kind of feels like, yes, there's the question to do that on one hand, but then on the other hand, like we hear once in a while that they're like, well, kind of customizing list forms that's supposed to be done in Power Apps,
sure,
as opposed to do that in SPFX. So I wonder, I think, or at least I don't recall a clear statement from Microsoft saying we want to do it left or right or both, but then it's kind of like left in and in the middle saying, well, okay, I'm not saying anything. Like we
haven't actually provided
and then
exactly. Yeah, we haven't
waiting.
provided an exit statement, and that relates again on the something what just said related on the Power Apps. So there is a story related on if you want to customize the list experiences, the new and edit experiences. That's a Power Apps play right now, at least, and which then drives more revenue for Microsoft, which makes sense but then it has a licensing impact. So there's kind of a multiple, let's say, what are those powers involved? The fact that yes, it would be great if people would be always able to use Power Apps, but then there are customers and partners who say, well, we're not willing to pay for that license. There has been some kind of confusion on that licensing as well. So I think we should have a more clear statement on that sooner or later. We talked about a few times on options openly in a community calls where we talked about the fact that we would actually support potentially at some point to override the whole list experience as a web part. And that would be then a pro developer game plan. And then we have the field customizer is for the list rendering, but you would be able to basically take ownership of the whole list. And then we have the column and view formatting, which is then a no code in quotes, story. And then we have the Power Apps play plan. Now, have we looked on this? No, we haven't. There is a plans, there's a suggestions, there's a structures, and there's a ongoing discussions behind of the scenes what should happen. Every single experienced SharePoint framework developer, ISV, and system integrator is saying that give me an opportunity to override the list experience using a web port, which makes perfect sense. And it might be the right thing to do. And then basically, if you want to have an end user or power user way of doing stuff, then you have to Power Apps.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. What will be the end result and decision? We'll see.
It depends.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see.
That's a good point, though. It's a very good point, Waldek.
Good. Now, and then I think this was the ACS, the final thing which you wrote like 5 times because you didn't want anybody to get too offended. But anyway, but it is a fair feedback. Stop building new hardened SPFX, and this really comes down on making sure that when we release something, we don't break. We would reduce the opportunities for regressions, issues popping up. We break something from the past, which we then fix using a 0.1 or 0.2 release, which definitely is not an optional thing. This is something which is definitely in the radar of the dev team to increase the quality of the releases when we ship them. It's an endless and constant fight. I can't even say the sides of the discussion on let's ship it tomorrow, and then no, we can't ship it tomorrow. We need to double check this, that, and that. No, we can ship it tomorrow. But then and it's an endless discussion. And this really comes down on something which we actually will talk about together with Waldek in upcoming episodes, which is around building a product versus building a project. So every now and then you need to ship, even though you know that it's not necessarily fully tested, because there's no way you can actually have a 100% coverage in your tests. That's just impossible. At the same time, we have quite a few examples in the past with SharePoint Framework where we caused some regressions, and sure, we fixed them as fast as possible, but it doesn't give confidence that we keep on doing that. So fair feedback.
Yeah, I guess the thing that's spurred me to say this, I will say that since I put the blog post out, the most comments, the most reaction I've gotten, both in the comments on the post, but also on Twitter as well, are people on this statement where people are saying that this is the most important thing to them. And it does seem like there has been a trend over the last 9 months since January, where when a release does come out, it's more often than not, there is a big issue, and it just is a determination of, is this going to affect me or is it affecting somebody else? And so is it that big of a deal? And I mean, I get it. I understand that, you guys are, you're nimble, what the whole thing is, the whole idea now is to, not with just you guys, but just in general, the industry is, fail forward, fail fast, so that you can fix things fast and stuff. But I guess the things that I've seen that have broken are things that are surprising, because they would, as somebody who's built a generator, Waldek and I have worked on one in the past for Office add-ins, and we put a ton of unit tests around the generator. I'm not saying you guys do or don't have them. We don't have access to that stuff, so I'm not insinuating anything. But for some of those things, I mean, yeah, we see that stuff is not when that a unit test would have caught things before something had shipped. And that's the part, I guess, that is the more frustrating side of it, is that it's when it's stuff that when you see going, okay, well, there's an edge case. Okay, well, stuff happens. But when it's stuff that happens and it's like, how did that, like with 1.9.0, the workbench broke, like, how did that one get through? And so it's stuff like that. And it's just, at least I experienced it. The workbench has gotten a lot slower on the reactive side. If you start typing stuff before, you could, as you type, it was a hard demo to do, because as you type it, the text was changing so fast. People had to be looking in two spots to see, hey, look, the web parts are reactive. But it feels now it's like going, oh, it's an easier demo, because as you type, it's a little bit of a lag before it shows up on the site. So thank you for making my demos easier. But I don't think that's right. I don't think that's what you were going for.
Yeah. Now, and one thing what we talked about last week as well is the open source generator, which wouldn't, by the way, fix this stuff. It might actually help on reducing some of that stuff in a way, but then open sourcing something doesn't mean that we would actually reduce our engineering commitments on it. That actually requires that we will increase our engineering commitments on something if it's open source, and still supported by Microsoft 100%.
So you guys were saying something when, I know that you talked about this in your last episode, and I listened to it. I do listen to you guys. Wow. Of course I do. I listen. There was something that you said though on this topic that I really want to comment on. So when I say like open sourcing the generator, I agree. Open sourcing it doesn't fix it, and I understand too that if you guys went that direction, somebody on the other side, you're going to have features that you're going to announce, like say at Ignite, that are going to show up in the generator, and you can't put those in the open source generator and have other people see those changes before you guys announce it, because I mean, this side of the project isn't so much open source and wide open like the .NET framework is. So I understand that that there's a complexity to it, but there are things that I think that that could be fixed, like a lot of the stuff that I mentioned inside of the inside this post, like the README, like cleaning up package.json, stuff that it would put a burden on Microsoft to go review some PR submissions that were made.
Absolutely.
But I do think that there are some things that would that you guys can put a certain kind of a terms of service, like, hey, we're open sourcing it, but we're not going open source. We're going what we call source open, where you can see the code and you can submit stuff, but it doesn't mean that we are accepting PRs. And if we add a whole bunch of new functionality to it and you had submitted a PR and it breaks your PR, I mean, hey, welcome to the open source world. That's your responsibility, not you, Microsoft, that you, Mr. PR submitter, that's your responsibility to make sure that your PR still works with the latest stuff. You should have to go back and you should have to fix it. And so, I think having some sort of like rules around it would be nice. But
yeah, I do agree. It would help on addressing some of that stuff. Absolutely. That's basically what you're saying. So it wouldn't fix all of the things, but it would help on certain things, and then we would be able to, community would be able to share or submit unit tests and whatever for the generator. At least the generator part of the house would be better tested, and well, at least it would be openly better tested. So
yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, one of the things that SharePoint benefits from is a very engaged and passionate developer community, and leveraging that, I think, would be just seeing this is hard, because once you go this direction, there's no pulling this back. Once you let the horses out of this barn, you're not going to be able to.
Now,
So.
what was interesting related on that one, and let's come back on the community and SharePoint Saturday events in a second. We need to also get a few articles, but really good discussion. But now, no, really good. Now, I think, if I'm not mistaken, we did talk about the opportunity and possibility of open sourcing the generator in SharePoint Conference. Now, the SharePoint Conference, even the Microsoft sessions, unless I'm completely mistaken, we, on whatever reasons, we did never actually release those recordings, which I don't quite understand what happened. So a lot of the let's say the announcements which were done outside of the exact keynote were actually never talked about. And people were not aware of the planned upcoming extension placeholders and all of that stuff, which is a pity, because I think we, by the way, had an awesome dev keynote as well. I think it was actually surprisingly good. So
It was good.
But good feedback. I think we went through the whole list of things, unless no, not really. I think that's just a summary on the things. But valid feedback, and let's keep on having discussion and open feedback, and vice versa. And what's good about this feedback and this blog post, as an example, this is clearly showing that AC has a lot of passion on trying to get the stuff fixed, rather than being Microsoft is blah, 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 blah. And then it's like, well, thank you for the feedback, but this is not beneficial. I can't fix it.
It doesn't
This
help.
is actionable feedback, and basically energy is being used on the right objective, rather than being used on something which is like, okay, that might be your opinion, but it's not beneficial for anybody. I can't fix that.
There are things that I did not put on here that I definitely would like to see you guys do, but that is what Andrew wants to see you guys do. That's not what I think is going to benefit the rest of the community. Yeah. I can't stand things where people are where you're just venting or whatever. It's like going, great. How would you solve it? What is your proposal here? Like, because venting doesn't do anything but make you feel better and annoy everybody else. So that's the part of this. I've been sitting on this post for about a month. I know none of this stuff is new to you, Vesa, because I know you've heard me say this stuff back in March. Yep. So, I'm not saying that nobody's done anything about it, but it's like this is stuff that has been we've talked about before, and not just we, but other engineering and other groups and stuff. But just trying to be constructive, I think you guys are doing a great job. There's a couple other things we'd like to highlight.
And anyway, I will share there's this recording to all of our engineers, so they are aware of this discussion. So if they don't talk with you and to AC anymore, that's because, no, just kidding.
I've heard that some people have said some things about this post. I haven't heard from anybody, but I've heard there's been some rumblings. I don't know if it's been positive or negative, but I'm like,
no. Everything is good. Like I said, good feedback is good feedback. And like I said, one of my old directors, when I was in local Microsoft Finland, he really had a great way of kind of handling people when they came and said, Waldek didn't do blah, 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 or complaining about something. The first reaction was, okay, what have you done to fix this? Which is always the right way of thinking things. There's no point using the energy in the wrong way, rather than just, like you said, venting on nothing. And well, Waldek is not like that, by the way. But
what did I do again?
None of this is news. None of this stuff is brand new to you guys. You guys all know this stuff. You've heard this before, and it was just a post for me to say something about it. And hey, I'm not gonna lie. Was there a little bit of motivation in me posting this and hoping the community would step up and get a little bit more vocal on some of these issues, on hopefully the ones that I think are big? Yeah, I was kind of hoping that, because I know that's how things get done. But I wasn't trying to get a pitchfork and torches and show up at Redmond's doorstep and be like, come on, guys, let's fix this stuff. That's not what I was going for. But there's a little bit of a degree in that. So
yeah. No, it's all good. It shows the passion what you have for fixing things. Absolutely. Now, let's actually move on forward from the ASIS blog post. I think we're done handling this one. Thank you for the feedback on that one. But now let's go through a few articles.
You probably didn't know, but AC is working already on a draft of a V2 that will be available next week.
You won't like the next one either. No, I'm just kidding.
It would be called 10 things I'd like to change.
Well, now, there are a few examples in the old community side of the house where blog post titles and whatever, they were clickbaits. One of my favorite was the blog post which was SharePoint add-ins is dead, and then exclamation mark, and that basically got a lot of attention. And then our customers were contacting Microsoft saying, well, your MVPs are saying that SharePoint add-ins are dead. What now? And I was like, no, they're not. They were not dead, and they're still not dead, and they're still well live and widely adopted and used. So, sure, if you can implement the functionality using SharePoint Framework, that is definitely the recommended way. But so SharePoint Framework together with provider-hosted add-ins, Azure-hosted stuff, hey, that's when it gets really interesting. So, but again, clickbaits are clickbaits. This is a wish list with valid feedback. So, cool. Fish list. Fish list. Okay, and on that bombshell, a few SharePoint Saturdays this week. We have Adelaide or SharePoint Saturday, and there's Pittsburgh. Just quickly scanning this. Where do we have the speaker list? Is it up to date? Is it up to date? Only a few speakers in Adelaide, so it's not yet up to date. I'm expecting somebody to update that later this week. And let's see if we go to the home. I think Pittsburgh were probably up to date, if I remember correctly. Typically, what happens depends really on who's organizing and what happens. These things are updated on the week when the SharePoint Saturday actually happens. But Pittsburgh already looks that it's ready to go. That seems a pretty nice set of topics as well. No SharePoint framework. SPFX. Yes, there is. There we go.
There we go.
Convert list item to PDF. That's a ListView command set, clearly. Good. So two posts there, and then Helsinki and Los Angeles and Richmond are coming on the same week. I think it was Jeff who put it a Twitter tweet where it was something like, in the following 2 months we have 28 SharePoint Saturdays, which is like, wow. That's pretty impressive, and obviously it's not just about SharePoint, it's around Office 365, but again it comes from the super active SharePoint community and now extending to other products and services as well, which are related on SharePoint or dependent on SharePoint and so on. So really cool. There's 3 SharePoint Saturdays at least in October 12th as well. Wow. Wow. And I'll be on a SharePoint Saturday at Helsinki. Hey. I just need to figure out what I'm expected to talk, but that happens. This one was good from Shuao, how to create a tile view in modern SharePoint lists. And this is around the ListView view customizers. So creating a specific kind of a definition. And I think, where was it? Well, there's a good GIF animation how to flip the rendering to a tile view, and the documentation of this one has been actually also updated, so you can actually create really cool looking lists. And this really shows this good example of the further investments what we're looking to do in the list side of the house. So making things easier, making lists truly customizable or easily extendable. So to say.
But then you edit the items and kind of
yeah, we'll see what will come off with all of that stuff. Fair feedback again, good feedback. Good feedback. This one was a sample which was actually mentioned in the monthly summary as well. Really cool sample from Akash around implementing a web part, which is then having a automatic dynamic links the header sections of the page. There is, I think it's actually in the roadmap. I mentioned that we're looking into having a out-of-the-box version of this one, or maybe it was actually even mentioned last week that it's now coming out. But this is a custom third-party implementation of that. And I noticed that there was a question in Twitter related on, hey, but has somebody then fixed if you browse using an iPhone, how the layout will be actually rendered? I think the right side still is sized on the below of the of the text, and that would mean that it's not useful really on the
So
iPhone.
your table of contents would be at the end as opposed
Yeah, exactly.
to the top.
That's not really that optimal.
Well, but then
I
you
don't
could
know.
have a header application customizer that would take you to the table of contents that you can take you back to.
True.
Or is it complicated?
True. But like I said, unless I'm completely mistaken, I'm like 98% sure we mentioned last week in some of the Microsoft blog posts that this is now coming out of the box as well. Because it's understandable. It's highly needed for wiki scenarios and a long page rendering.
Yeah.
This one, SharePoint Framework Web Mobile Camera Demo, relatively simple one, using the mobile and mobile to device bridges what it's having on the browser. So how do we, from Siddharth, how we can take actually a photo or open a webcam from a web page and then close a photo. And then I'm not sure, I didn't actually double check this one. Is it is displaying that, but is it actually saving that to the site as well?
That would be cool, yeah.
Yeah, because that would be definitely doable as well. You would be able to then save that to a SharePoint list or the library, and that way you would have a picture taken from wherever. Well, anyway. This one, show and hide SPFX web part content based on the user permissions. So basically, I think Velin had a community call demo related on application customizer, which was visible, not visible for external visitors, but for the internal users. So kind of a similar way of handling things, and then implementing a section of the web part, which is only visible dependent on the user permissions. So if the user has the right permissions. Not a super difficult thing to do, but again, it's good to know how you can actually access the permissions and use that information. So useful. To be fair, good point here. This is actually just, it's good to be aware that this is just blocking the rendering. So it doesn't mean that it's not a security thing. So,
right. Yeah, that's why I had the little scowl on my face. I'm like, wait a minute, is it? Yeah, how is it doing this? And I was like, wait a minute. It's like, this isn't really security. Which, I mean, it's cool. Yeah. It's a consumption thing. But as long as people that are doing this understand that the second it touches the browser, it's not secure. I mean, well, I'm not trying to freak anybody out there, but the second it touches the browser, you can't like, you're not really securing something by hiding it, because you can still see what's there.
Sure.
Well, I guess on the flip, like all of this is based on permissions that are coming from the user object in SharePoint, right? So it's not like you're saying if a C, then do not show the banner, right? So eventually they would be enforced on the web, or like in this case on the web.
Sure.
But then if you would imagine that you are not allowed to write to the list, then sure, you would not show the UI. But if somebody would find a way around it in code, well, you still are not allowed to write to the list.
Correct.
Right. So this is more like a step to optimize the experience by not showing things that are irrelevant to you, but in the end, it's still enforced in the objects in SharePoint.
Yep. Yes. Because behind the scenes, it's not about hiding stuff; it's actually checking the permissions.
Permissions, yeah.
Right.
Absolutely. This one here from Elio. Elio has been blogging a lot around this exact same topic, which is how is the right way of doing implementing an application customer, so it's getting rendered on the right way on the page experience or list experience when we're doing those partial loading of the pages. So it's basically, there's quite a few entries on here, and Elio is, I think he's a technical or chief architect of Wallow Intranet, so it's quite critical for them to make things happen in the right way as well. Not going to deep dive on the code, but good article from Elio around that topic. And this one as the final thing, so David Warner has been really active on helping people to actually learn how to contribute. So David has, I helped him to create the repo, but he has really worked on the structure here. The main idea of this repo is basically have a repository where people can test without being concerned on breaking up stuff in GitHub. So they can test the process, they can submit, he can, whenever he is having one-to-one calls, helping people to use GitHub, he can use this repo from a guidance perspective as well. I think it's a great idea. We created the repo which is basically then free to get edits and pull requests, and there's no harm actually on if the pull request is doing something, because this is for learning how Git actually works, or GitHub actually works. And this is really important because quite a lot of people actually, even though they would be developers, are not really that familiar with GitHub, and that seems to be the number one, let's say, obstacle for jumping on contributing. And that kind of relates also on Mark D. Anderson's new SB usage docs BMP repository. So this is something which we've been working for quite a while, well, not quite a while, but for some while, prepping our things, which is actually creating a open source docs also for non-development topics. Because when you think of it, if you think about classic Microsoft, everything what we've done has always been divided to be IT pros, TechNet, MSDN developers. But guess what? Majority of people are not either one.
Right.
So they're basically business analysts, consultants, then the middle term, whatever we wanted to call them, because there would be an allocation. The middle there in the SharePoint, yes, indeed. Which is kind of the governance solution, our information architecture discussions and considerations and all of that stuff, which isn't an IT pro or admin thing, but it's not a dev thing either necessarily. It might be a person which does all of this stuff. So Mark wants and has been driving this to basically start collecting then contributions from a non-dev people, and then eventually our plan is to get it visible in the docs area of Microsoft. Clearly call out that it's a community contributed area, but it's giving guidance on these non-dev topics as well. A number one problem for Mark has been the fund that, well, the non-dev people especially are afraid of Git because it freaks out people, and that's where sharing is caring repo also helps. So basically people can play around, and David is writing guidance and all of that stuff here as well.
Cool. So they're scared of Git, so we created a Git repo for them.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, I got it.
That's how you fix that. What you need to do is just run towards your fear, right?
I'm terrified of snakes. There's a snake.
There's a snake.
Still terrified of it.
Yes. Cool.
Sorry.
I think that sums up the stuff for today. So I'm going to stop sharing so we can actually close out. That's it. It's now 9:20 p.m. On last day of my vacation, my long weekend. But hey, I'll be back on business tomorrow morning. Ooh.
You have 40 minutes left of your vacation, and then you have to go to bed.
Pretty much, yes.
My bedtime.
Yeah, that doesn't work that often. I typically work until 10 p.m. at least, because 10 p.m. is lunchtime in Redmond. So that way I will have my Redmond morning time still available in my calendar. So story of my life. That's how you make this work. I don't actually mind. So the fact that I don't have to move over is quite a significant plus. And I wouldn't be able to be as productive as I am if I would actually move to Redmond. It's just realities of life. But Waldek, what are you going to do this week? Any plans?
Oh yeah, a lot of them. So actually, I'm building HTML stuff now.
Really?
Yes. Yeah, I mean,
hard plug, huh?
Yeah. Seriously, today I had an issue where something was just not aligned on the page, and I was like, really? Really? Am I gonna now spend time on this? Like, seriously. But I mean, yeah, it's like the realities of life. We're doing some experiments at Rancor, and somebody gotta do this, because if I will pull one of our devs, well, then they are not doing anything else. So
sure.
It's like, okay, so I want to do it myself. I want to try a few things, but it's like it's a thing that we experiment. It spans everything from Azure, AAD, 365 APIs, auth, including HTML and client-side stuff. And it's like, and the hardest part is what? Aligning divs on a page. Like, seriously? Yeah. Seriously, it's still the number one up there, right? And don't even get me on the point where we say, okay, so does it work in IE 11? Like, no, I don't. No, I will not. Oh, yes, I will not even give it a try in IE 11. Yeah.
Well, I'm just crossing fingers that the Edge Chromium would be released fast, because then that helps on the IE 11 story as well. So
I hope so.
If it's somehow when you install Edge Chromium and it actually uninstalls IE11, that would help.
Yeah, that's true as well. That is true.
I don't know if it's really going to fix those things. I think that everybody thinking that it's going to fix the IE11 problem. I'm like, not unless it uninstalls it. It doesn't do it.
Yeah, but I mean, plus, right, there are still like hundreds of legacy apps that will not work in anything but IE11, and then you still have to keep that thing alive until these apps are there. And as long as IE11 is there,
mode or whatever it is.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, as long as that's around, there is no reason for anybody to upgrade because their stuff works. And it's like these like chicken and egg thing. It's like, oh, really? Like, let's just move on to new stuff, things where we can use, like, we don't need polyfill, so we can just use modern technology and just go with the time, as opposed to be stuck in a past. And like, no, because we always used to do it. It's like, no.
Salesforce, GitHub, and Google Apps no longer support IE11. I would love to see Office 365 on that list.
Yeah. No comments. No comments on that.
I know. I'm just throwing a grenade. I'm going to walk out. There you
go. See ya on that bombshell. Good night.
I think that's a good well, AZ, anything interesting on your side of the house this week?
Yes, I hope to have a blog post that you guys will mention next week. That is, I did something a couple months ago that made testing significantly easier for SharePoint Framework projects. It's really hard to set those projects up. So I created a preset that you just do one little install and ta-da, your project's completely set up. My goal is to be able to, I will have a blog post. I hope that I have it out this week, but it will basically copy one file into your SharePoint Framework project and then create 2 name value pairs. And ta-da, you have a build, test, and deploy to SharePoint Online Azure pipeline that will do complete everything. And you don't even have to understand Azure pipelines. You just have to drop a file in and ta-da, it's all done for you using some really cool templates. So hopefully that it's all done and it works. I've been using it for a couple of weeks now. I just haven't had time to write the blog post. So that is, the outline is written. I just need to write it.
And these pipes are based on CLI, or they use CLI or not?
Yes, the pipe. Yes,
perfect.
Yeah, for deployment, yes, it uses the CLI. In fact, I actually found a
the bug. Yeah,
I found a regression, I should say. Found it.
Well, yeah, we didn't handle correctly commands that aren't there anymore.
Yeah, commands that were erroring out were not throwing an error code, which made it look like the command was successful. So yeah, anyway, it's cool because
it's fixed.
You'll see there's a thing in the post where it effectively will, when you do Azure pipelines today, or when you do Azure DevOps today and CI/CD, it is a bit of a manual task, but there is a relatively new way of doing it that is still in beta or preview called YAML pipelines, where you literally can just drop a file in and you can actually use templates. So I've created template jobs for building, testing, and deploying to SharePoint Online. So I now have it set to where I can literally drop one file into a project, create 2 settings, and then go to Azure DevOps. You push it to Azure DevOps or in GitHub, and ta-da, your project will deploy to your Office 365 SharePoint Online tenant automatically, usually in about 5 minutes.
Nice.
Cool.
So cool. Yeah, it's pretty cool. So I'll have a post out hopefully this week about it, maybe 2 weeks. We'll see.
Yeah. It depends always on the timing. My table is still full of post-it notes and things what I need to do, and
emails.
Yes, I need to spend a lot of time on them. But we need to get some docs updated quite soon because there's pending things which we need to get closed. As an example, the app-only support for taxonomy is supported. Taxonomy edits and all of that has to be documented properly. So. 100%
1609, 2249, 4589.
Oh yeah.
Keep writing.
Yeah,
exactly. There we go.
But those going to be released part of the SPFX out of the box SPFX YAML generator. So let's see if we can get them squeezed in for 1.10 or 1.11. Let's see if we can actually get the 1.10 out. But hey. We'll see. We'll figure it out. But I think that's it. This was quite a long one, actually. We spent quite a lot of time chatting, but hey, these things do happen. So
I tend to have that kind of an effect.
Yes,
I'm a bit long-winded. I apologize. Thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate it.
Not a problem.
Absolutely.
Good discussion.
Anytime.
Definitely. I think that's it. Thank you, AC. Thank you, Waldek. And we'll come off with
Thank you, Vesa.
SB. Thank you. Thank me.
Thank you, Vesa. Thank you, Waldek.
Again, in 1 week. So thank you, everybody who's watching or listening. Please keep the feedback coming. Thank you. Bye-bye.
See ya.
Bye.